So I was having a conversation with a wisdom teacher, and he shared with me that one of the most memorable things that one of his teachers said to him was that he reached a stage in his life where he didn't want anything. He wasn't asking for anything. All that he really wanted, if he had to use that word, was wisdom. Wisdom. And I thought a lot about that over these last few weeks and how if someone were to ask that to me, would that be my answer as well? And I back it up just a little bit to say, I will hope that we can understand that wisdom, like everything else, is not outside of us, never has been. It's kind of buried, if you will, under all these different images or metaphors of layers and closed doors and belief systems, but it's never been separate from us. And so the journey to the uncovering of that wisdom, I think we can all agree on, is incremental. It's very much influenced environmentally. It's based upon the consistency of practice and devotion and sincerity with wanting to become more available to that which is called wisdom. And it's different than knowledge. It is something that meets us in the softness, in the nuance, as David's writing used that word nuance. It's found in a dedication of sorts that we begin to unfurl and unfold and uncover all of the earthly things that create resistance within us. And so as I was pondering the question, if I could only have one thing, and I kind of wrote it out this way, if you were offered one lasting gift to carry with you for the rest of your life, oof, if you were offered one lasting gift to carry with you for the rest of your life, what would you choose? And my choice would be wisdom and all of the surrounding things that are necessary in order to make that a reality. And there's a confluence of ideas that come with this. And one is this idea of time, and also the idea that how we exit is how we enter. I bet you've heard this before from the Abraham Hicks material, but she would often say, your energy is where you last left it. And I remember at first when I heard that, not quite fully comprehending, my wisdom was still layered. But as my wisdom began to be unlayered and more readily accepted and not pushed away, I began to see the subtlety and the nuance of what that meant. My energy is where I left it. As a practical example, years ago, I remember I would visit the post office often as part of my ministerial job and mailing things out. And it was always understaffed and it was always a hassle and there was always long lines. And so I dreaded my visit to the post office. And right around that same time, I heard this phrase, my energy is where I last left it, meaning if I loathe something, if I'm resistant to something, if I'm very speedily naming or labeling something or defining something as awful, chances are then my energy is with that. And it's going to be really difficult, or I'm going to be really hard pressed in order for the next experience in that same location to be different. It's not the location's fault. It's really an examination of how this personal energy really does come into play. And so when I began to keep showing up and keep seeing the long lines and looking at a watch and all of the things and stressing about time, I began to hear that over and over. Your energy's where you last left it. And I remember being willing to play with the idea. And so I began to look around, and there's nothing architecturally beautiful about a post office. It's just a bunch of cinder blocks. But I began to think about the draftsman or the student and in architecture class who had to come up with a design. I thought about all of the graphic designers who had to come up with the displays that are on the bulletin board. I thought about the miracle, actually, of licking or at the time peeling something and sticking it on an envelope and having it travel anywhere in the world without me having to manage it. And as I'm standing in the line and I'm thinking about those things rather than why is this taking so long, you can begin to see the subtle nuance and shift within the energy because now my mind is focused on looking at all of the things around me and beginning to slowly let a little bit of gratitude and even awe slip in. And I repetitively began to do that in my weekly, sometimes twice weekly visit to the post office. And I remember one of those times getting up to the window, the single person, it was a man behind the window, and he saw the return address, and it was the address of my church that had founded in Alabama. And he goes, "What's that?" And I kind of told him a little bit, and he seemed curious. And I said, "I tell you what, the next time I come in, I'll bring you a magazine." So the next time in, I brought a Science of Mind magazine in and I gave him the magazine. Long story short, he ended up showing up. He ended up loving it. He ended up bringing his family. He ended up serving on my board. And all of that, as ridiculous as that sounds, and there's a time lapse in there, but your energy is where you last left it. And you could take that example or you could take any example. And if you're willing to take ownership of your energy, how you exit is how you enter. All of those things very seamlessly work together, and something new can always be revealed for us. And so, wisdom, if I could accept one gift in my life that I could carry with me for the rest of my days, it would be the unveiling of that kind of wisdom. To notice all of the subtle biases and all of the withholds and all of the resistance that continues to want to make something out there dependent upon my energy, dependent upon my well-being, dependent upon my expansion. Again, this isn't about putting blinders on and pretending that we don't live in a human existence because we do. But the beauty about being in the world, but not of the world, is if you're going to be in the world, be in it. But be in it with someone who's willing to step by step, day by day, allow the greatest gift, the unfurling of infinite wisdom to take place inside of them. And I go, I'm really good with that. There's nothing else that I think that I need or want because my goodness, if that was the ultimate, everything else would just seemingly fall into place. Wisdom would help me understand my senses of urgency and clinging and grasping and craving. Wisdom would help me to see my fears, the fears that perhaps are so deeply buried that I wasn't aware of them. Wisdom would help me to become actually enthusiastic about looking at all of the things that promote my own personal suffering and freeing myself from that. And when I was thinking about all of that, I was reading about this Tibetan yogini, so a woman student in the 11th century in Tibet. And I'm probably going to mess her name up because I don't speak Tibetan, but it's Mashig Libdran. Mashig Libdran. And sometimes you can find stories about Mashig Libdran from the writings of Pema Chodron. But I love the universality of this. So Mashik Libdran was feeling like all of us feel, very fearful about the circumstances of life at that time. And she had the opportunity to go to a wisdom teacher. And just like all of us have an opportunity to go and ask these questions or to sit at the feet of those that are being that bodhisattva or the alleviation of that suffering. And she went to this master during a time of great personal crisis. And she said to him, I want to wake up. I want to awaken from my own suffering. It wasn't anything about survival needs. It was really based upon what I see as the same kind of request. I want to be wise enough to be able to wake up. And when I read that in some of Pema Chodron's writings and in some other friends' writings, I want to wake up. It made me realize or ask the question, I should put it this way, how many of us would really want to ask that? And if we were willing to ask that, what would be the follow-up? What would be the practice? What would be the devotion that would accompany that request? So very much like me, regarding my energies where I last left it, then when am I going to stop expecting the physicality of things out there, be it person, place, or thing, to remedy that energy for me? Would I sincerely, if I said more than anything else, I want wisdom, would I even abide by all of the signs and all of the wonders that come, be they big or small? And if, like Mashik Ladrone, would I be willing to say, I just want to wake up? And he gave her some things that I'm going to share with you. How much of it would I actually use? What percentage of my life would I devote to the uncovering of that? So she said, I want to wake up. I want to awaken from my own suffering. And from this moment of raw vulnerability emerged what is called in the Buddhist traditions the five slogans, which is a teaching that's simple and incredibly transformative and powerful. These five slogans invite us to look at everything from our blind spots to our repetitive behaviors to our entrenched beliefs and conceptual frameworks to the way in which we are so trapped in the same cycles over and over and over again. So the teacher said, number one to her, confess your hidden faults. Confess your hidden faults. Ooh, all of us, well, I'm not actually an ex-Catholic, my husband is, but all of the ex-Catholics, you already have a leg up on other faiths because you got to admit, confession is actually rather good for the soul if it's encapsulated in a safe environment. But even in recovery programs, there's a step in there where you do a moral inventory. And so whether you're Catholic or in a recovery program does not mean that you are absent of or prohibited from finding a vehicle to confess your hidden faults. What does that look like? You and I hold things in secret, and we're not even aware that by holding them in secret, they are accompanied by a whole slew of things that range from, oh my God, if only people really knew me, then they would, and we fill in the blank. We hold these hidden secrets, and by doing so, there is this sort of low level river of suffering that continues to interrupt and to defy what I would call true authenticity, because we're shape shifting so often with the mask that we are putting on, trying to preserve those secrets. So, how does one, in a world that tells and yells and speaks so much about boundaries and being careful, how does one find a safe place to confess your hidden faults? I don't know, other than the fact that if you say, I am ready to confess your hidden faults, then your energy of being willing will produce the right vehicle, person, situation, or circumstance for you to be able to do that. Could be anything from traditional therapy to who knows what. But you have to really ask yourself, would I be willing to do that? Deep respect for confession, deep respect for that recovery step and that rigorous moral inventory. And I want to bring this in now to the way in which there's an upcoming year. How we exit is how we enter. If we exit this way, we enter this way. Do you really want to start another human timeline, another human year, managing all of the masks, taking yet again, maybe it's been decades, you're still dragging the hidden faults over and over again. Do you really continue want to do that? Or would you, more than anything else, like to embrace the wisdom and wake up? So number one is confess your hidden faults. Number two is approach what you find repulsive. There are many ways that you can, this is the translation from the Tibetan text, approach what you find repulsive, but you could say approach what you find fearful, approach what you find as a real definitive us and them of separatism. Notice again, by having this, one of the five slogans offered to you, just notice your internal reaction. Notice the sort of, we'll call it comfortability that exists in there that says, I don't have to do that. I've worked really hard and blah, 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 blah. But what happens then if you approach what you find repulsive? For me, it's a continual dismantling of othering. So, for example, as I was working on this, what came to me the other day was the cliche, some people come into our life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. You've heard it before 1,000 times. You're like, ugh. So a reason, a season, a lifetime. I bet you if you were to sit down with that statement and I said, which is the best one, we would all say lifetime. Because there is this ingrained bias in there that somehow longevity and all of those things that work in harmony with lifetime conceptual ideas is better than reason or season. And as I sat thinking about that, and I went, oh my God, approach what you find repulsive. One of the things that I could say has been repulsive to me in the past was those people who showed up for a reason, didn't know it was for a reason for a while, but boy, did it sting. Boy, did it deliver betrayal. Boy, did it deliver all of those things. And what was fascinating about letting wisdom come in and show me, it goes, look at how you've labeled two of these things as marginal and one good when they're all equal. They're all equal. It's very Shakespearean. Remember, all the world's a stage, and all of those who are players in it. I think that's from As You Like It. All the world's a stage, and people are exiting in and out and through us, and everything in the cast is necessary for the evolution of the play. So when we are looking at the things that we find repulsive, you may not have used that terminology, but there are things that we keep at arm's length that we are very comfortable in defining as something outside of us. So treat these like a good fable because I don't have all the definitive answers of what each of these things are going to be. But what's a good fable? A good fable is Margo could read it, Lee could read it, Margie could read it, Connie could read it, and everyone would get something different from the fable. And it's the same thing with these five. Next is help those you think you cannot help. This isn't about overreaching. This isn't about codependency. This is about looking at the way in which we approach others and the way in which we then define ourselves as not enough. Again, go with the idea of a fable. I don't have the definitive explanation of that, but this was one of the hindrances that he gave her because she asked that she just wanted to wake up. So the more that I sit with this one, and it does, wisdom wants you to sit with these things, help those you think you cannot help, isn't so much about the quality or the type of help that you are offering, as it is mostly kind of what Eleanor Roosevelt said, and that is you must do the thing you think you cannot do. Think about that. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. Two big words pop out in that for me. You must, and think. You must be able to look at the way that you think about things as either you can or you can't. And this very easily is synonymous with this one for me, because sometimes I will look at a situation and I go, oh, there's nothing that I can offer to that. I'm still walking around with an old theme of my childhood that says I'm a burden or I'm in the way. And these slogans then become something that if you sit with them in your request to unveil your wisdom, oh boy, will they take you to all kinds of things. That one alone took me off to the reason, season, and a lifetime just a couple of days ago. And I thought, isn't it funny that I've equated one as more valuable than the other when they're all the same? The next is anything you are attached to, give that away. Anything that you are attached to, give that away. Again, that reminds me of that Buddhist business practice, that one of the ways that we are to help eliminate our own craving, clinging, and grasping is to listen to what somebody else really wants, to just listen, and then devote ourselves to helping them achieve it. And when I heard that for the first time, I remember thinking, wow, that's a fast on-ramp to dismantling limitation. Because oftentimes we become so hidden in our fear and our jealousies that, well, oh my God, if they get this, there's not going to be enough for me. But can you imagine if someone tells you or you're a part of a conversation and you hear that they really want that without big fanfare or look at me, you go and you help that person to achieve that thing? What do we learn from that? We do learn fundamentally that it's like a candle and the wick and the light. Just because you now light the candle next to you does not rob you of the burning flame and the brilliance and the illumination that exists within that candle. Anything you are attached to, give that away. So many more layers with that. When I was this youngster living in Los Angeles, I was a part of a, I was, I, God, I must have been like 28. I was a part of a Joel Goldsmith meditation class. And I lived in LA, and the teacher, she was 90, and she would host these, and I would drive, gosh, like an hour and 45 minutes to go to these meditations. Her name was Doris. And I loved Doris because it was very unusual. There was no self-promotion. There was a routine. Everybody took their shoes off, and we sat in the main area of Doris's condo, and she would read something from Joel Goldsmith, and then we would do these really elongated meditations. And it was really the first time that I began to associate something with stillness. I believe it was a granddaughter or something, used her mailing list and emailed all of us who were coming to say it was going to be Doris's 90th birthday. And I was like, oh, got to get something for Doris. And I didn't have a lot of money. But I wanted Doris to know what she meant to me. So I got this beautiful plant. I took all of my little money and I went and I bought this really beautiful, beautiful plant. And I was so proud. And I showed up for Doris's meditation slash cupcake birthday cake celebration that day, and very ceremoniously presented this plant to Doris. And she just went, "Oh, David, that's so beautiful. Oh, isn't this lovely?" And then someone else said, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful." And she went, "Here, have it." And she gave the plant to this other woman who went, "Really?" And she went, "Ah." And I just stood there deflated, thinking, "Oh my God." And Doris, knowing what was going on internally inside of me, looked at me and she went, "Honey, it was a gift, right?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am, it was a gift." And what I learned from that is if you're going to give something to somebody, give it without attachment. And it was like I got this really sort of bucket of cold water lesson right there, but in the most loving way. Every time I think of Doris and I think of that moment, I have to laugh because that was a that was such a swift, fast lesson in non-attachment. Anything you are attached to, give that away. And lastly, go to the places that scare you. Go to the places that scare you. That could be literal, but it could also have so many rich layers of opportunity and beckoning for you in terms of maybe perhaps unearthing for the first time that there are actually places that scare you. Maybe there's so much required for you creatively and vulnerability wise that you've put so much of that on the back burner. And damn it, nothing is going to allow you to bring that to the front burner again because the last one broke you. To which I say, did it? Or did it break you open? Did it break you open to the possibility of perhaps there is a myriad of ways in which creativity can flow from you and myself? And so when I think about these again, and I'll read them off again, confess your hidden faults, approach what you find repulsive, help those you think you cannot help. Anything you are attached to, give that away and go to the places that scare you. When I think about those words being spoken as far back as the 11th century, and that here was this woman in her raw vulnerability, not asking for food or shelter or sustenance, but going to her teacher and say, more than anything, I want to wake up. I want to awaken from my own suffering. That's wisdom. And that is wisdom. And here's what I've come to realize is that if that's our request as well, suddenly you begin to see that there are others around who are asking the same or having the same request. That is the beauty of community. But until it becomes our sincere request, we are sort of blinded to the vulnerability of that which exists in others. It's not that we can't physically see them, but that beautiful nuance that is unannounced, that just quietly resonates and permeates around everything. Suddenly, that thing which you could call it your tribe, you could call it your community, it does show up. And if how we exit is how we enter, and if our energy is where we last left it, I've said this probably to 8 people last week in working with them. If there's something like this that is your request and your wish, one of the first things that you have to notice is the feeling that it's not going to work. I'll do it, but it's not going to work. Many of these people have it in their minds that because they live in a certain geographical area, that they are isolated and alone. And I thought, we live in an infinite world of possibility. And so it will be true that if I hold on to that and I keep that as my truth, then I continue to get that. But if I'm willing to play with the energy and go, okay, universe, I'm paying attention. I'm paying attention. Take my hand. If I'm so dense that I'm missing it, then give me a little burning bush experience so I really get it. But know that underneath all of this, what I want to do is I want to wake up. I want to wake up. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you, David.
I'm wrapped in it, wrapped in it, wrapped in it, wrapped in your love. Sweet love, sweet love, yes. I'm wrapped in it, wrapped in it, wrapped in it, wrapped in your love. Your love, love, your love. Wrapped in it, sweet love. Wrapped in your love. Sweet love. Wrapped in it, wrapped in it. Wrapped in it, wrapped in your love. Sweet, sweet love. Wrapped in your joy, I am all that I am, I am all that I am joy. Sweet, sweet joy, sweet joy. Wrapped in your peace, I am all that I am, I am all that I am peace. Wrapped in peace, wrapped in joy, wrapped in love. Wrapped in your love, wrapped in it, wrapped in your love. Sweet, sweet love, sweet love. Wrapped in your love, I am all that I am, I am all that I am love. Love, 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 love. Sweet love, 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 love. Sweet love, sweet love. Wrapped in your love, I am all that I am. Wrapped in your love, I am that I am. I'm all that I am, all that I am, I am. I am love, love, love.